Tom Cameron's great.
David Bridge, John Shannon.
Bloodbath in Baghdad. Car bombs, mortars, and revenge. Hundreds killed and injured in a Shiite neighborhood, one of the worst attacks yet. Here at home, even wind and rain couldn't stop the big balloons as America celebrates Thanksgiving Day. Picture this, precious memories blown away by Hurricane Katrina, now rescued one image at a time. And in our series, What Works?, saving one of America's mightiest rivers from an unwelcome invader.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Substituting tonight, Ann Curry.
Good evening. Major news tonight from Iraq, which today endured one of the most devastating days of violence since the war began. A series of apparently coordinated car bombs and mortar attacks hit one Baghdad neighborhood this afternoon. At least 160 civilians were killed, more than 250 were wounded. In response, the government has imposed a curfew in Baghdad and closed its airport. There is high anxiety not only because of the number of casualties, but also because the targets, Shiites, quickly struck back. Our reports begin tonight with NBC's Tom Aspel, who is with the U.S. Army at Camp Victory in Baghdad. Tom, good evening.
And the curfew can't last forever, and when it eases, many here fear there'll be a wave of reprisal killings.
Mass murder in the Shiite slums of Baghdad.
The U.S. wants the Iraqi government to disarm all the militias, but so far it's seen little evidence that the government is willing or capable of doing so. Ann?
NBC's Tom Aspel tonight. Tom, thank you. We turn now to NBC's Richard Engel, who has covered the Iraq War for nearly 4 years now. He joins us from Beirut tonight. Richard, if what we are seeing now is all-out civil war, is there anything Iraqi's Prime Minister al-Maliki or President Bush, who are to meet in Jordan next week, can do to stop it?
And it's clear after today's attacks that Iraq once again has entered a new level of violence.
Meantime, Richard, a step up in violence is also feared in the wake of the assassination of a Lebanese government minister this week. What happened at his funeral today?
I was at this funeral covering it earlier today. It was a very emotional funeral, but also a political protest. There was a tremendous amount of security in the streets. Dozens of Lebanese soldiers were locking down downtown Beirut. There were snipers on rooftops, dozens of armored personnel carriers, and then hundreds of thousands of mourners were carrying the coffin of Pierre Gemayel, a government minister assassinated earlier this week. But it was not only this emotional outpouring of grief in Martyrs Square, but also a demonstration against Hezbollah and Syria. The demonstrators today blame both Hezbollah and Syria for carrying out the assassination and of trying to take over this government. Now, Hezbollah denies that it was involved, but is planning a massive counter-demonstration for next week. Tonight, Sayed Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's leader, was calling on people to remain calm until then. Ann?
NBC's Richard Engel tonight. Richard, thank you. 10 U.S. service members got Thanksgiving phone calls today from President Bush. The president is spending the holiday at Camp David with family and friends. He talked with 2 members each of the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard on duty around the world. All across this country, many families had much to be thankful for today, from the balloons that did fly high over Broadway here in New York City to the homecoming of loved ones who've spent months in harm's way. NBC's Rahema Ellis now on Thanksgiving 2006.
In Jacksonville, Florida, perhaps the best Thanksgiving Day treat for military families.
There's Papa!
Troops were welcomed home after serving 6 months in the Middle East, including Iraq.
I'm just happy to be back home.
In Atlanta, a tradition of giving continued. Thousands of holiday meals were served to people who didn't have a home. In Los Angeles,
thank you very much, Father.
A Catholic priest on an annual Thanksgiving Day mission, handing out $15,000 to the poor. But nationwide, charities worry that beyond this day designated for giving, contributions to food banks have slowed.
We saw an increase last year with Hurricane Katrina and Rita, when people saw poverty and hunger as being a real issue. The thing that most Americans don't recognize is this goes on 12 months out of the year.
In New York, despite the rain, for many this day began with a parade. And authorities were keeping a close watch on the winds so these giant balloons could make it safely down the 2.5-mile parade route.
Wind gust of 9.2.
Okay.
Mindful of accidents in recent years that seriously injured some parade watchers, today, balloons for the 80th annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade flew no higher than 17 feet.
And he's bigger than a New York City hotel room.
Ronald McDonald barely got off the ground. For many, it didn't matter.
My favorite thing about Thanksgiving is being thankful and eating.
One young boy capturing the spirit of the nation as this holiday season begins. Rahima Ellis, NBC News, New York.
Well, during this busy holiday travel season, an incident at the Minneapolis airport earlier this week is still reverberating. 6 Islamic religious leaders were taken off their flight to Phoenix in handcuffs after passengers reported what they thought was suspicious behavior. Ever since 9/11, Americans have been told if you see something, say something. But just what is the standard? Here is NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams.
They were Muslim religious leaders ready to go home from a conference, but to a man waiting for the same flight at the airport gate and who watched them pray there and overheard them talking, they were something quite different. In a note he passed to the airline, he described, quote, suspicious Arabic men saying Allah, Allah. Dozens of U.S. citizens who are Muslim or come from other countries say passenger suspicions often single them out because of the way they look. A Wall Street executive, Michael Dasrath, claims he was ejected from his. They are obligated to take passenger concerns seriously. And a former top FBI counter-terror official says the incident should not discourage travelers from reporting anything they consider suspicious.
There simply aren't enough law enforcement people to spot all suspicious behavior, and the whole system is dependent on the concept that people will come forward and report.
Many security experts, NBC News, Washington.
Tonight, the spy at the center of a poisoning mystery has died. This was former Russian spy Alexander Litvinenko earlier this week, being treated in a London hospital after he was poisoned by an unknown substance. He took a severe turn for the worse overnight when he suffered heart failure. Doctors still don't know what poisoned him, though they have ruled out the heavy metal thallium. And in the Gaza Strip, the latest suicide bomber to attack Israeli troops turns out to have been a Palestinian grandmother. Conflicting reports say this woman, seen in a video before her death, may have been as old as 68. The explosion in northern Gaza slightly injured 2 Israeli soldiers. Up next, as NBC Nightly News continues on this Thanksgiving Day, every photograph a story and a reason to give thanks to perfect strangers who helped save precious memories after Hurricane Katrina. And later, bringing turkey dinners to the tip of the spear.
Sky knows when it's time to snow. It's just another ordinary miracle today. Life is like
Friday, it's a post-Thanksgiving oddball smorgasbord. Oops. The wildest, weirdest, most outrageous videos ever on Countdown with Keith Olbermann, MSNBC Friday.
We are back now with NBC News in Depth, and on this broadcast we have reported often about what Hurricane Katrina took from the city of New Orleans and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Well, tonight, on this second Thanksgiving since the storm, a story of something that was saved. Precious family photos lost, but now found, all because of a stranger who could not sit by and do nothing. NBC's Campbell Brown has this story.
A class picture, a baby's first steps, a wedding.
Look at the bride.
Calling out to everybody in the house, hey, I'm finding our pictures online.
At one time, there was
NBC News, Biloxi.
And up next, a great American river under attack. But wait till you see what works against this unwelcome invader.
Big money required. Amazing makeovers you have to see to believe on Today.
Holiday shopping and the economy. NBC Nightly News tomorrow. What works? Brought to you by Detrol LA. Ask your doctor if Detrol LA is right for you.
Now the latest in our week-long series called What Works, highlighting efforts that make life better. Tonight, the fight against a foreign invader and the unlikely heroes who have emerged in this battle. The alien is the Asian carp, the so-called flying fish, are threatening the ecosystem of the Mississippi and its tributaries. NBC's Kevin Tibbles recently traveled along one river where there is now hope the carp population can be controlled.
The start of a new day for commercial and wreaking havoc. Boat motors startle the fish, making them jump. Illinois River.
Now turning to a new record in space is a shot sent round the world. This is the one-arm swing of a Russian cosmonaut on the International Space Station. He had a special lightweight golf ball into space. It's expected to circle the Earth 48 times before burning up after traveling about 1 million miles. A Canadian golf club maker is believed to have paid the Russian Space Agency at least $5 million to film the golf shot for a television commercial. Up next, a taste of home for some Americans in one of the most dangerous places on Earth.
When you watch him play, sometimes he looks perfect.
For Peyton.
We end our broadcast tonight with a glimpse inside a high-stakes mission in Afghanistan today. It involved battle-tested U.S. soldiers more than ready for this assignment. NBC's Jim Maseda reports from Jalalabad.
The mission is a go. With a killer Apache helicopter watching its back, it's Black Hawk up. This operation, so secretive, the briefing was classified and codenamed Hot Turkey. Tatum, NBC News, Jalalabad.
And that's our broadcast for this Thanksgiving Thursday night. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ann Curry. Brian Williams will be back here with you tomorrow night. Good night and happy Thanksgiving.
NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Now available as a video podcast. Watch anytime, anywhere, free. Podcasts.msnbc.
NBC Tonight.